Okay, in this problem, or in this project, we're going to turn on an LED and off an LED using a button. So let's quickly start with the wiring that I've got here. So you can see over here, we have our board, okay? Uh, Notice that I have this black wire going from ground up to this blue um, right here on the breadboard. Okay, and what that does is it makes everything across this horizontal line here ground. Okay, so pretty much every black wire is going to be ground. So you can see I have one ground that goes to the LED, one ground to this button, one ground to that button. Okay, now the way a circuit will work is, one side is ground, the other side has wiring. So for example, on my LED, right, my ground goes to one side of the LED. Now keep in mind with the LED, one wire is going to be shorter than the other one. The shorter wire is the grounded wire. The orientation of the LED is important. Okay, whereas here I have a longer wire, and that's going to go to the positive side. Okay, so again, we go ground to the short wire of the LED. The long wire goes into a resistor. This is a 220 ohm resistor. You can put any ohm resistor. Okay, the higher the resistance, the less current that's going to go through that wire, causing a less bright LED. Right. So the smaller the resistor, the brighter the LED. The larger the resistance, the dimmer the LED. Okay, so after it comes through the positive, it goes through dimmer, and then you can see that it comes into this red wire. Okay, which then plugs into channel 5. So channel 5 is what's controlling the LED. Basically, if I turn it on or off on channel 5, that's going to kick it on. Okay. Now, one other thing that I'm realizing with the breadboard is, again, down here horizontally, right, this will all be ground, this second row down here. Now, going vertically, anything that I plug in on the same row, so for example, on the longer end of the LED, going right below, that is effectively like connecting the resistor to the end of that wire. Okay, that's going to be a what we call short circuit. That's going to be touching it, so you'll have the current going up from the ground through the LED, through the resistor, and then you see the other side of the resistor is here. Right below is that red wire. So that red wire is effectively being attached to the other side of the red wire and then comes back down. Okay, and that's going to be my output channel, channel 5, and you see I have that circle going from ground all the way to the channel. Okay, I have two inputs. I have a button on the left and a button on the right. Now notice, I'll just start with this again. I go from this ground pin, because again everything along this horizontal row is grounded because it's attached to the ground on the board. Then that black wire, okay, ends right here. Okay, this pin on the button, I'm sorry, this pin is connected to that wire because again it's on that same vertical line up here. Okay, the other side of the button is connected to the blue wire because again those are lined up vertically as well, and then that blue wire goes to channel 9. So similarly with channel 8, this yellow wire goes from channel 8 to one side of the button, and again because these are lined up right here, they're connected, and then the other side of the button is lined up with this black wire which goes into the ground. So again I go from ground up through the button back down to channel 8 or channel 9 depending on the button. So I've got two inputs, one in channel 8, one on channel 9, that's going to work with the button. So when I push that button down, it essentially closes this and creates that circuit that we're talking about, where I go from 9 up through the button and down. Okay, so it's again reading if it's up or down. It's what we call a digital input, high or low, up, down, 0, 1, however you want to think about it. Okay, so 8 and 9 control those inputs. 5 controls the LED. And again, you make that circuit from ground all the way through your input or output back to a channel. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Try to wire it up just like it's done here, and it should work out for you. Okay. So from that, let's head over to the code and see what we're talking about. Now, up here, remember there's two parts of any code, right? There's the setup, okay, and then there's the loop, which is down here, okay? Now, actually, even before the setup, we're doing what's called, we're basically setting my variables, right? So int means integer, which is basically saying to the code, hey, this is going to be an integer variable, okay? And I've got 3 variables that I'm defining. One is LED pin, one is button A pin, and one is button B pin. And I'm going to set those variables equal to 5, 9, and 8. And I assume you see where this is going. This is ultimately going to be attached to those pins that we have set up there, okay? So when I go into my void setup here, then just like we've done previously with some practice code, we set up each of these pins, right? So what I have here is pin mode and then LED pin. Well, all LED pin means is that variable, which again is up here labeled as number 5. Okay, so it's saying set pin 5 as an output. That's where my LED is going to be. Okay, so that LED pin is just a variable that we place 5 into. Then I've got these two, which are the 2 buttons. And again, button A pin is 9, button B pin is 8. So all this is saying is set pin 9 to an input pull-up and pin number 8 to an input pull-up. So again, setting up those pins, letting them know channel 5 is an output, channel 8 and 9 are going to be input pull-ups. And we just use that using a variable as opposed to direct numbers, but if you want, you could just put the direct numbers in as well. Okay, so again, that's the setup. Now, here's my void loop, which is essentially just 2 if statements. The first if statement reads, if digital read button A pin, and again, button A pin is channel 9, so if 9 goes low, that means if I push button that's connected to channel 9, then do what's inside these curly brackets, which is going to be write LED high, right? And again, LED pin is 5, so send 5, make that go high. So if I push button A, which is hooked to channel 9, turn on that LED, which is hooked to channel 5. The other if statement I have is if button B, so the other button, the one that's hooked to channel 8, if that gets pushed down to low, then turn off the LED. Make channel 5 go low. That LED pin, which is equal to channel 5, go low. So it's just these 2 if statements. So all this is doing is the loop starts, it stares at, it looks at channel 9. If it's pushed down, it turns it on. Then it looks at channel 8. If it's pushed down, it turns it off. And it just sits there and looks back and forth between those. And this is going so fast, it's essentially instantaneous to us. Okay, but it's basically, is A on, is B on, is A on, is B on? And then if it is, then it'll either turn on or off depending on what I've got. So now if I slide over to the picture, you can see I've got these 2 buttons here and here. My LED is here. Hopefully you can see all of the wiring. It gets a little messy, that's why I have the drawing up there as well. But you can see this black wire goes into the ground across the top here. So each one of these black wires is connected to the ground on the board. And that's important. You always want to ground all your wires so it has kind of that ground basically is like the 0 voltage. Okay. And then you've got these 3 wires. You've got the red wire coming in, goes through the resistor here, and then into the LED. Remember, the direction of the LED is important. The longer wires should ultimately go to the board channel, whereas the shorter wire should be grounded which I have here, right? So again, on this vertical distance right here, this end is connected to this black wire, which then goes into this blue. This whole blue line right here is going to be grounded because again, that black wire there goes into that. Okay, so again, you've got channel 9 is the blue wire, channel 8 is the orange wire, channel 5 is the LED. So if I push channel 9, you see that the LED comes off. If I push channel 9 again, it's still on, right? The way to turn it off is, again, hey, let's push channel 8 and it turns it off. So one button turns it on, one button turns it off, right? And again, if I push this button while it's off, it just stays off. It sees that button, it's turned it off. It sees this button, it turns it on. And that's how this code works.